In 1913, as the heir apparent to Sigmund Freud, Carl Jung risked everything by rejecting his mentor's theories, plunging himself into 6 years of total psychological isolation. So, today we're going to unpack the incredible story of Carl Jung and his revolutionary framework. Here's the journey we're going on. We'll start with the high-stakes drama of The Great Rupture, follow him on his descent into the self, and then see how he built the Jung Code. After that, we'll open up the alchemist's toolkit he used, explore his lasting legacy of wholeness, and finally, uncover the secret to finding the gold in the shadow. All right, let's kick things off with the moment that changed everything. And I want you to understand, this wasn't just some polite academic disagreement. This was a full-blown crisis, a professional and personal earthquake that would either completely shatter Jung or forge him into something new. Let that sink in for a second. Jung was literally Freud's crown prince, the guy handpicked to carry the torch for the entire psychoanalytic movement. He had it all: status, respect, a clear path forward, and he threw it all away. To publicly break with Freud's core ideas, well, that was professional suicide. He was basically walking away from his entire world and stepping off a cliff into total darkness and isolation. And this decision kicked off what he later called his confrontation with the unconscious. So what was this big, world-changing disagreement actually about? Well, it all boiled down to one thing: the nature of the unconscious mind. You see, for Freud, the unconscious was like a personal basement. It's this dark, creepy cellar where you shove all your private traumas, your secret desires, everything you're ashamed of. But Jung started to see it differently. He thought, what if it's not just a basement? What if below that basement, there's a connection to a vast underground ocean, a collective unconscious, filled with the myths, symbols, and wisdom of all humanity? For Jung, it wasn't a source of shame to be managed. It was a reservoir of immense power. And here's the key. Jung didn't just passively suffer through this period of isolation. He didn't see it as a mental breakdown. No, he treated it like a deliberate, even heroic exploration. Instead of running from the chaos, he decided to turn inward, face it head-on, and map it out. This 6-year journey was a conscious descent into his own mind, a quest to meet the very dragons that Freud told him to avoid. And it was down there, in the darkness, that he found the raw material for his entire life's work. Okay, so this descent wasn't just some random event. It was the culmination of a lifetime of experiences that uniquely prepared Jung to look where nobody else would dare. You really have to understand the man to get the code he created. You know, Jung's entire system was really born from struggle. As a kid, he felt emotionally isolated, so he learned to analyze himself, to live in his rich inner world. That became his foundation. Then, the public split with Freud, it was brutal. It cost him everything: his reputation, his professional identity. He was totally alone. And out of that necessity, he started blending two worlds that everyone else kept separate: the logical rigor of science and the deep, ancient wisdom of mythology. He realized that to truly be whole, you couldn't just stick to one rigid dogma. And this is the massive insight he came back with from that journey. Real psychological power, true strength, wasn't about suppressing the bad parts of yourself to be good. It was about having the guts to turn around, look your own darkness in the eye, and bring it into the fold. He realized that the very things we deny and push away, that's exactly where our greatest power is hiding. Which brings us right to the heart of it all, the philosophy that rose from the ashes of his old life. This wasn't just a handful of interesting ideas. This was a systematic blueprint for the soul, a code for reaching a whole new level of being. You see, for Jung, the ultimate goal isn't happiness or success as we normally think of them. The goal is psychological wholeness. This is that state where your conscious self and your unconscious self are no longer fighting a civil war. They're actually in dialogue. It's the grand synthesis of everything you are: the good and the bad, the light and the dark. And for Jung, that integration was the true source of all creativity and genuine health. And to get to wholeness, you have to go through one critical gateway: the shadow. Now, this is a huge concept. The shadow isn't just your evil twin. It's everything about yourself that you've repressed to fit in. It's your anger, your greed, sure, but it's also your raw ambition, your untamed creative instincts, your wildness. By ignoring the shadow, we don't get rid of it. We just make it unconscious, where it can sabotage us from behind the scenes. And worse, we forfeit all the raw energy and power that's locked up inside it. Okay, so how do we actually work with this stuff? Jung's code is basically built on 3 pillars. First, there's the shadow work mandate. This is a non-negotiable command. You must actively confront the parts of yourself you suppress. Second is the integration principle. This is the process of taking that darkness you found and consciously merging it with your ego to create something bigger, stronger, more whole. And third, and this is just brilliant, is the Mythological Mapping Protocol. Jung realized our personal problems are rarely unique. They're ancient patterns. So by using myths and the symbols from our dreams, he created a kind of objective map, a universal language, to help us navigate the chaotic, subjective territory of our own minds.
Now, this all sounds incredibly deep, right? But how did Jung actually do it on a day-to-day basis? Let's shift from the what to the how. This is the practical toolkit he developed for turning the lead of the unconscious into psychological gold.
This is the question, isn't it? It's the one Jung had to answer for himself while he was locked away for 6 years. How do you take all that swirling, sometimes terrifying internal chaos and make sense of it? You need a system. You need a protocol. His primary method was something he called the active imagination and documentation protocol. This is the disciplined practice he famously chronicled in his legendary private journal, the Red Book. It's kind of like a waking dream. You learn to quiet your conscious mind and then actively engage with the images and figures that rise up from your unconscious. So here's how the protocol works in action. First, you document. You induce these visions and then you meticulously record everything. You draw the figures, you write down the conversations, you paint the landscapes. You make it real. Second, you dialogue. This is huge. You don't dismiss these internal figures as hallucinations. You treat them as real, autonomous parts of your psyche. You ask them questions, you listen to their answers. Finally, you integrate. The whole point is to figure out what these figures represent, and in doing so, you transform the raw, subjective chaos of your mind into an organized, usable source of creative insight. You're building a relationship with your own soul.
His second core habit was a daily commitment to analyzing his dreams. Now, while Freud saw dreams as hiding something, Jung saw them as revealing something. He believed dreams were direct communications from the unconscious, speaking in their native language, symbols. This protocol was simple. Every morning, write down your dreams. Then, work to understand their symbolic language, not just personally, but by connecting them to the universal myths and archetypes of history. It's all about keeping that channel to your deeper self open every single day.
So, what was the end result of all this incredibly intense and frankly dangerous inner work? Let's turn now to the lasting impact of Jung's transformation, not just on him, but on all of us. This timeline really just lays out his entire hero's journey perfectly. He starts at the top as Freud's heir, then he's cast out into exile. He endures that 6-year underworld journey of the Red Book years. But he comes back transformed, and by 1921, he's founding his own school of thought, analytical psychology. By the end of his life, he wasn't just some therapist. He was a global philosopher whose ideas shaped art, film, religion, pretty much how we understand what it means to be human. And this right here is his ultimate legacy. Jung's life became the living proof of his own theory. He showed the world that the courage to confront your own inner darkness isn't some distraction from your work. It is the very source of your greatest creative power. And that brings us to our final takeaway. How do we take this amazing story and turn it into a practical blueprint for our own lives? Well, the Jung Code gives us a pretty clear blueprint. First, adopt the shadow work mandate. Make a conscious decision to start looking at the things you suppress. A really simple way to start? Ask yourself, what trait in other people absolutely drives me crazy? Often, that intense irritation is a giant flashing sign pointing directly at something in your own unacknowledged shadow. That's where you start digging. Second, implement a documentation protocol. You don't need a fancy leather-bound book. A simple journal will do. Start writing down your dreams, your daydreams, your stray thoughts. The simple act of getting it out of your head and onto the page makes it real. It's about treating your inner world with the seriousness it deserves. You know, Carl Jung built his entire legacy on the truth that the highest form of creativity is psychological wholeness. The Jung Code provided a systematic blueprint for turning your shadow into power through rigorous, courageous self-confrontation. His life's work proved that the power, the creativity, and the authenticity we're all searching for isn't found by looking toward the light, but by having the courage to venture into the dark, because his relentless journey revealed one single immutable rule: the gold is always in the shadow.